First Contact Redux. Admiral Xerix of the Galactic Confederation stood at the observation deck of the Marshall Exhibition Center on New Genesis, his iridescent scales reflecting the purple light of the binary star system. Below him sprawled the most advanced military testing facility in known space, currently hosting the crown jewel of Confederation engineering. The neural-linked combat platforms, the massive machines, each standing 70 meters tall, represented centuries of technological evolution. Their quantum-processed cores could calculate battle scenarios faster than light itself, while their adaptive armor could withstand direct hits from antimatter weapons. They were the perfect synthesis of organic consciousness and machine efficiency. They were also, as far as Lieutenant Sarah Chen was concerned, completely backwards in their basic configuration. "Sir, with all due respect," Sarah said, adjusting her Earth Defense Force uniform as she addressed the towering reptiloid admiral, "you're approaching the neural link from the wrong direction." The assembled alien dignitaries, representatives from 12 different spacefaring civilizations, turned to stare at the human engineer. At 28, she was not only the youngest person in the room, but also represented the youngest spacefaring species present. Admiral Xerix's translator processed her words with a slight delay. Wrong direction. The concept seemed to physically pain him. "Lieutenant Chen, these platforms represent the culmination of 3 centuries of research by the finest minds in the Confederation." Sarah nodded, her eyes never leaving the massive machines visible through the transparent aluminum windows. "Yes, and they're incredible. But you're trying to make the organic brain adapt to machine thinking. We learned the hard way that it's better to let the machine adapt to organic thought patterns." Commander Vex, the lead engineer of the NLCP project, stepped forward. Their crystalline forms sparkled with agitation. "Impossible. The processing requirements alone would." "Actually," Sarah interrupted, pulling out her tablet, "I've been running some numbers since the demonstration began. Your quantum cores are amazing, but they're only using about 40% of their potential processing power because you're forcing them to maintain rigid operational parameters." She projected a holographic diagram into the center of the room. "See these neural pathways? They're beautiful, but they're too perfect. The human brain, and I'm guessing most organic brains, doesn't work in perfect patterns. We think in chaos, in inspiration, in intuitive leaps. If you let the quantum core adapt to that instead of fighting it." "Preposterous," Commander Vex chimed, their crystalline form vibrating with indignation. "The platforms are designed for military precision, not chaos." Sarah grinned. "Want to bet? Give me 10 minutes in one of those machines. If I'm wrong, I'll personally apologize to every member of the engineering team. If I'm right." She paused, her eyes twinkling. "Well, let's just say you might want to rethink what these platforms are capable of." Admiral Xerix studied the young human for a long moment. In the 3 years since humanity had joined the Confederation, they had repeatedly demonstrated an uncanny ability to find unconventional solutions to seemingly solved problems. It was simultaneously their most fascinating and most frustrating trait. "Very well," he finally said, causing Commander Vex to emit a startled harmonic. "Platform 3 is already configured for demonstration. You may have your 10 minutes, Lieutenant." Sarah's grin widened as she headed for the elevator. Behind her, she heard one of the alien dignitaries ask, "Should we be concerned that she looks exactly like human children do before they do something their parents won't approve of?" The answer came just as the elevator doors closed. "Based on my study of human history, yes. Yes, we should." The next 10 minutes would change the course of interstellar military development forever, though not in any way the Confederation's military leaders could have predicted. As Sarah stepped into Platform 3's neural interface chamber, she was already mentally calculating the adjustments needed to prove her theory. The machine hummed to life around her, its standard startup sequence initiating. But Sarah had no intention of following standard procedures. As the neural link established itself, she began to think, not in the ordered, military patterns the machine expected, but in the wild, creative leaps that characterized human thought. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a dam breaking, the quantum core began to adapt. Rather than forcing her consciousness into predetermined paths, it started flowing with her thoughts, amplifying them, enhancing them. Platform 3 moved, not with the precise, measured movements of a military machine, but with the fluid grace of a dancer. Sarah felt herself grinning as the massive machine responded to her thoughts with increasing speed and accuracy. In the observation deck, alarms began to blare as the platform's performance metrics shattered every established parameter. Admiral Zerix watched in amazement as the 70-meter war machine performed maneuvers that should have been physically impossible according to their current understanding of the technology. How? Commander Vex's crystalline form was vibrating at a frequency that suggested either extreme distress or unprecedented excitement. The power consumption readings are off the scale, but the efficiency ratings are improving. Sarah's voice came through the communication system, filled with the pure joy of discovery. That's because you're not fighting the organic chaos anymore. The quantum core isn't just processing my thoughts, it's learning from them, adapting its own processes to match organic thinking patterns. The more it adapts, the more efficient it becomes. As if to demonstrate her point, Platform 3 executed a perfect backflip, a movement that caused several of the alien engineers to make sounds that their translators couldn't process. "Lieutenant," Admiral Zerix said, his voice carefully controlled, "are you suggesting that our most advanced military platforms could function better by being less rigid in their operational parameters?" "Not just better," Sarah replied, bringing the platform to a graceful halt. "I think these machines could revolutionize how we think about the merger of organic and mechanical systems. But first," she paused, and even though they couldn't see her face, everyone in the observation deck could hear the smile in her voice. "First, I have a proposal that might sound a little crazy." Commander Vex's crystals chimed in what might have been resignation. "Why do I have the feeling that our perfectly ordered military exhibition is about to become something entirely different?" Sarah's laugh echoed through the communication system. "Let's just say, if you think this is impressive, wait until you see what these platforms can really do when we stop thinking of them as just war machines. After all, the best way to test their full capabilities might be something a little more competitive. The challenge, a tournament." Admiral Zerix's scales shifted through several shades of purple as he processed Lieutenant Chen's proposal. "You want to turn the most advanced military platforms in the known galaxy into sports equipment." The briefing room of the Marshall Exhibition Center had never felt more crowded. News of Sarah's unconventional demonstration had spread quickly, drawing representatives from every major species in the Confederation. Even the notoriously reclusive Mist Collective had sent an observer, their gaseous forms swirling with interest in a containment field. "Not sports equipment," Sarah corrected, standing before the assembled dignitaries with the same confidence she'd shown in Platform 3. "Think of it as an advanced testing protocol, one that will push these machines to their absolute limits while promoting interspecies cooperation." Commander Vex's crystalline form emitted a harmonic that the translators interpreted as a mixture of horror and fascination. "You cannot be serious. These platforms cost more than some planetary defense systems." "Exactly." Sarah's eyes lit up. "We have the most advanced neural-linked machines ever created, quantum cores that can adapt to organic thought patterns, and representatives from 12 different spacefaring species. Imagine what we could learn by seeing how different species approach the same challenge." A low rumble filled the room as Corax, the Titan representative, leaned forward. Their massive form barely fit in the reinforced chair designed for their species. "Explain this tournament in more detail, human." Sarah activated her tablet, projecting a holographic display of the testing grounds. "We modify the existing course to include various challenges: obstacle navigation, precision tasks, speed trials. Each participating species gets to adapt a platform to their own neural patterns, like I did. Then we compete, not just to win, but to showcase different approaches to human-machine integration. "And what?" asked the Mist Collective's representative, their gaseous form condensing slightly in interest. "Would be the purpose of such an exhibition?" "Discovery," Sarah replied simply. "Look what happened when I spent 10 minutes approaching the neural link differently. Now multiply that by 12 species, each bringing their own unique way of thinking. We could learn more about neural-machine integration in one day than we have in decades of controlled testing." The room erupted in multiple conversations, each species translator working overtime to keep up with the rapid exchanges. Admiral Zerix raised a scaled hand for silence. "Lieutenant Chen, while your demonstration was impressive, what you're suggesting is unprecedented. These platforms are designed for military applications, not—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Fun," Sarah suggested, earning several untranslatable sounds from the more conservative representatives. "Admiral, with all due respect, that's exactly why we should do this. The Confederation has been approaching these machines from a purely military perspective. But what if that's limiting their potential?" She gestured to the assembled representatives. "Every species here has a unique way of thinking, of processing information, of approaching challenges. The Mist Collective thinks in patterns of flow and dispersion. The Titans understand structural integrity in ways we're still trying to comprehend. The crystalline network," she nodded to Commander Vex, "processes information through harmonic resonances we can barely measure." "And humans?" asked a new voice. Dr. Laxey of the Scientific Council stepped forward, their bioluminescent patterns suggesting intense curiosity. "What do humans bring to this equation?" Sarah smiled. "We bring chaos, Doctor. Controlled chaos, but chaos nonetheless. We see patterns where others see randomness, find solutions by breaking conventional rules. And," she paused for effect, "we really, really like to push boundaries." "That," Commander Vex chimed, "is an understatement that even our translators cannot fully convey." A ripple of what might have been laughter moved through the room. Even Admiral Zerix's scales showed hints of amusement. "There is another factor to consider," Sarah added, her tone becoming more serious. "Right now, most species view these platforms as weapons of war. But what if we could show the galaxy that they could be more? That the same technology that powers our most advanced military machines could also bring species together in peaceful competition." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. It was Dr. Laxey who finally spoke. The technological insights alone would be invaluable. They mused, their bioluminescence pulsing thoughtfully. And the diplomatic benefits would be considerable. Admiral Zerix finished, his scales shifting to a more contemplative shade. "Though the logistics of such an event would be already worked out," Sarah interrupted, projecting a new set of specifications. "My team has been running simulations since my demonstration. We can have everything ready in 3 standard days." 3 days. Commander Vex vibrated in alarm. "That's barely enough time to recalibrate the neural interfaces for different species, let alone modify the course and establish safety protocols." Sarah's grin returned. "Commander, if there's one thing humans excel at, it's pulling off the impossible when someone says we can't. Besides," she added, her eyes twinkling, "I already have volunteers from 6 species who want to try their hand at platform piloting." Admiral Zerix looked around the room, noting the mixture of excitement, apprehension, and curiosity on various alien faces. "I suspect, Lieutenant, that whether I approve this or not, something very much like it is going to happen anyway." "That's very insightful of you, Admiral," Sarah replied diplomatically, though her expression suggested she had already started making preparations. "Very well," the Admiral sighed, his scales settling into a resigned pattern. "You have your 3 days, Lieutenant." But he added as excited murmurs filled the room, "I want it understood that this is an official Confederation research and diplomatic event, which means everything will be documented, safety protocols will be followed, and all technological insights will be shared among member species, Sarah finished, already factored into the plan. Sir. As the room erupted in excited discussions and immediate preparations, Commander Vex approached Sarah. You humans, they chimed softly, have an unsettling ability to make the impossible seem not only possible but inevitable. Sarah watched as representatives from various species began forming discussion groups, already talking about modifications and techniques. That's not the impressive part, Commander, she replied with a smile. The impressive part is making everyone want to be part of the impossible. Above them, through the transparent ceiling, the massive forms of the combat platforms stood silently in the purple light of New Genesis's binary stars. Soon, they would be transformed into something their designers had never imagined, and in the process, might just transform the relationships between species as well. Modifications and mayhem. The main hangar of the Marshall Exhibition Center had transformed into what Commander Vex's translator could only describe as organized chaos, though the crystalline engineer insisted that was an oxymoron. 8 neural-linked combat platforms stood in various states of modification as teams from different species worked to adapt the machines to their unique neural patterns and operational philosophies. You cannot simply reroute the quantum stabilizers through the auxiliary power matrix. Commander Vex chimed in distress, watching as Sarah Chen and her human engineering team did exactly that on Platform 3. The power fluctuations alone cold actually work in our favor, Sarah interrupted, her head deep inside an access panel. We're not trying to maintain stable power levels anymore, remember? We want the quantum core to adapt to organic thought patterns, which means it needs flexibility in its power distribution. Nearby, the Mist Collective's engineering team was taking an entirely different approach. Their platform's outer shell had been modified to include thousands of microscopic vents, allowing their gaseous pilot to extend their consciousness throughout the machine's systems. Fascinating, Dr. Laxey observed, their bioluminescent patterns shifting rapidly as they recorded data. Each species is naturally adapting the technology to match their fundamental nature rather than forcing themselves to conform to the original design parameters. The Titans had practically rebuilt their platform from the ground up, reinforcing every joint and connection point to handle the massive neural output of their pilot. The resulting machine looked less like a sleek military platform and more like an ancient god of war, its thick armor decorated with intricate patterns that somehow improved its structural integrity. The quantum cores are showing unprecedented adaptation rates, reported Dr. Kira Patel, Sarah's second-in-command. It's like they were just waiting for someone to let them evolve beyond their original programming. Sarah emerged from the access panel, her face streaked with hydraulic fluid and a triumphant grin. That's because they were. These machines aren't just tools. They're a synthesis of organic and mechanical potential. We just needed to stop treating them like weapons and start treating them like partners. A loud crash drew everyone's attention to the far end of the hangar, where the Crystalline Network's platform had just executed what appeared to be a perfect pirouette, before falling flat on its face. Harmonic resonance calibration still needs work, Commander Vex noted dryly. At least they're trying something new, Sarah pointed out. Yesterday you wouldn't even consider the possibility of a 70-meter combat platform dancing. Indeed, each team was pushing boundaries in ways that would have been unthinkable before Sarah's demonstration. The Mist Collective had developed a neural interface that allowed their pilot to literally flow through the machine's systems, experiencing it as an extension of their gaseous form. The Titans had created a control system that operated on principles of gravitational manipulation rather than direct neural commands. Even the traditionally conservative Crystalline Network was experimenting with using harmonic resonances to achieve more fluid movement patterns. The fact that their platform currently lay face down on the hangar floor was, as Commander Vex reluctantly admitted, a necessary step in the learning process. Lieutenant Chen, Admiral Zerix's voice came over the comm system. The Medical Council is demanding an update on safety protocols for tomorrow's event. Sarah looked up at the observation deck where the Admiral stood. Tell them we've installed emergency override systems keyed to both mechanical and biological readings. If anything goes wrong, the platforms will automatically power down and enter a stable configuration. And the quantum core adaptations, the Admiral pressed. Some council members are concerned about potential neural feedback. Already handled, Dr. Paddle replied, pulling up diagnostic data on her tablet. We've installed buffer systems based on human VR technology. The neural link will terminate before any harmful feedback can reach the pilots. What she didn't mention was that these safety systems had been tested extensively, mostly because Sarah had a tendency to push platforms well beyond their intended operational parameters during routine calibration. A new commotion arose as the Ethereal Collective's platform began emitting a soft blue glow, its quantum core harmonizing with their pilot's unique energy-based consciousness. The sight of the massive machine moving with ghostly grace drew appreciative murmurs from all present. Now that, Sarah said with satisfaction, is what I call thinking outside the box. There is no box, Commander Vex corrected, their crystalline form vibrating with what might have been humor. You humans disassembled it, redesigned it, and turned it into something that defies several laws of physics. Only the ones that were asking for it. Sarah grinned, then turned serious as she addressed the assembled teams. Remember, tomorrow isn't just about winning. It's about showing the galaxy what's possible when we stop limiting ourselves to conventional thinking. The next few hours were a blur of final adjustments, test runs, and near disasters that were averted only by the quick thinking of various species working together. The Titan's platform almost overloaded its power core until the Mist Collective figured out how to use their gaseous nature to create a temporary cooling system. The crystalline network's harmonics problems were solved by, of all things, a human engineer who played in a rock band and understood resonant frequencies. As the artificial day cycle drew to a close, Sarah stood with Commander Vex and Dr. Laxey, watching the teams make their final preparations. You know, Commander Vex chimed thoughtfully, when you first suggested this tournament, I thought it would be the end of the combat platform program. And now? Sarah asked, though her smile suggested she already knew the answer. Now I think it might be just the beginning, the crystalline engineer admitted. Though I still maintain that calling it the first annual Galactic Mech Olympics is unnecessarily dramatic. Just wait until you see what we've planned for the opening ceremony. Sarah replied with a wink. Above them, through the hangar's massive skylights, the binary stars of New Genesis were setting, casting the modified platforms in shades of purple and gold. Tomorrow, these machines would do things their designers had never imagined possible. But more importantly, they would bring together species that had previously only interacted through formal diplomatic channels or military exercises. You humans, Dr. Laxey observed, their bioluminescence pulsing with amusement, have an interesting way of making progress. Oh? Sarah asked, already checking the final diagnostic readings on her tablet. Yes, the scientist's patterns shifted to indicate both amusement and admiration. You don't just think outside the box. You convince everyone else that the box never really existed in the first place. The grand event. Dawn broke over the New Genesis testing grounds, its binary stars painting the sky in impossible shades of purple and gold. The modified course stretched out for kilometers, featuring everything from precision obstacle courses to open areas for speed trials. But it was the gathered crowd that truly made history. Representatives from every known spacefaring species, gathered not for war or diplomacy, but for something entirely new. This is either going to be the greatest breakthrough in interspecies relations, Admiral Zerix muttered, or the most expensive disaster in Confederation history. Sarah Chen stood at the control center, monitoring the final checks on all 8 platforms. Each machine had been transformed over the past 3 days, becoming unique expressions of their pilot's species and culture. Why not both? She grinned, earning an untranslatable sound from Commander Vex. The first hint that this event would exceed all expectations came during the opening ceremony. The ethereal collective's platform emerged from the hangar wreathed in luminescent energy, performing a series of movements that somehow combined ballet with quantum physics. The crowd's reaction nearly overloaded the translation systems as each species tried to express amazement in their own way. Platform 7, you're clear for the first trial, Sarah announced, watching as the Titan's massive machine took its position. Remember, this is about showcasing capabilities, not just speed. The Titan pilot's response rumbled through the comm system. Understanding achieved. Tiny human friend. Prepare for demonstration of gravitational manipulation techniques. What followed defied several laws of physics. The Titan platform, despite its reinforced bulk, moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something its size. It navigated the precision course not by conventional movement, but by literally bending gravity wells around itself. That's not supposed to be possible. Commander Vex vibrated in disbelief. Maybe we just never tried it before, Sarah suggested, already recording the data for later analysis. Each performance brought new surprises. The Mist Collective's platform seemed to phase through solid obstacles, its gaseous pilot extending their consciousness through those microscopic vents to map paths that didn't technically exist. The crystalline network, having finally mastered their harmonic control system, turned their run into a symphony of motion and light. But it was the human demonstration that truly changed everything. Platform 3, you're up, Sarah announced, nodding to Dr. Patel, who had volunteered as their pilot. Show them what controlled chaos looks like. Kira's response was to launch the platform into a maneuver that had several alien engineers reaching for their emergency shutdown controls. The machine moved not just with speed and precision, but with a creativity that bordered on artistry. It didn't just navigate the obstacles, it used them, turning each challenge into an opportunity for something unexpected. Is she dancing? Admiral Zerix asked, his scales shifting through colors of confusion and amazement. Sort of, Sarah replied, watching as Kira guided the platform through a series of moves that combined parkour, martial arts, and what looked suspiciously like breakdancing. She's letting the quantum core adapt to her natural movement patterns instead of forcing it to follow predetermined routines. The result was spectacular. Platform 3 moved like a living thing, each action flowing naturally into the next. When Kira hit the speed trial section, she didn't just run. She transformed the platform into a blur of motion that somehow maintained perfect control despite breaking several speed records. The neural interface readings are off the scale, Dr. Laxi reported, their bioluminescence pulsing with excitement. The quantum core isn't just adapting to her thoughts anymore, it's anticipating them. The crowd's reaction was immediate and electric. Species that had previously viewed the platforms as purely military machines were suddenly seeing possibilities they'd never imagined. The Mist Collective's observation spheres swirled with patterns of inspiration. The Titan representatives were already discussing modifications to their civil engineering platforms. But the real breakthrough came during the final exhibition. All platforms, take your positions, Sarah announced, triggering curious murmurs from the crowd. This hadn't been on the official program. 8 massive machines moved into formation, each one unique in its modifications and capabilities. What followed was something no one in the galaxy had ever seen before, a choreographed demonstration that combined each species' unique approach into a harmonious whole. The ethereal platform's energy fields interacted with the Mist Collective's gaseous extensions, creating patterns of light and matter that defied description. The Titan's gravitational manipulations provided anchor points for the crystalline network's harmonic movements. And at the center, the human platform wove it all together in a display that was part dance, part physics experiment, and part proof that the impossible just needed the right perspective. This, Commander Vex's crystalline form vibrated with emotion their translator couldn't quite capture. This is not what these machines were designed for. No, Sarah agreed, watching as 8 different species worked together to create something entirely new. This is what they were meant for. We just had to give them the chance. As the demonstration reached its final, with all 8 platforms moving in perfect synchronization despite their radical differences, Admiral Zerix turned to Sarah with an expression that suggested he finally understood something important. "Lieutenant Chen," he said carefully, "I believe we may need to reconsider our entire approach to neural-linked technology." Sarah smiled, already making notes for future modifications. "That's the thing about technology, Admiral. It's not just about what we can make it do. It's about what it shows us we can become." Above them, the platforms completed their performance with a move that should have been impossible, a perfect fusion of 8 different species approaches to movement, control, and cooperation. The crowd's reaction transcended the need for translation, a pure expression of joy and amazement that crossed all species barriers. "So," Sarah asked, turning to Commander Vex with a grin, "still think this was a mistake?" The crystalline engineer's response was lost in the sound of celebration, but their harmonics suggested something between exasperation and pride. The first annual Galactic Mech Olympics hadn't just been a success. It had become a glimpse of what was possible when different species stopped competing and started creating together. And this was only the beginning. Legacy. 6 months after the first Galactic Mech Olympics, the Marshall Exhibition Center on New Genesis had undergone a transformation as dramatic as the platforms themselves. What was once a military testing facility had become the galaxy's premier center for neural-linked technology research, with teams from every spacefaring species working together to explore possibilities they'd never considered before. Sarah Chen, recently promoted to Director of Interspecies Innovation, stood in her new office overlooking the main development area. Below, a Titan platform was teaching a human-modified machine how to manipulate gravitational fields, while a Mist Collective engineer helped optimize their power distribution systems. "You know," Commander Vex chimed from beside her, their crystalline form reflecting the morning light, "when the military council approved your tournament, they expected it to improve our combat capabilities." Sarah smiled, watching as an ethereal platform practiced a new form of quantum tunneling developed in collaboration with human physicists. "And did it?" "Yes," the commander admitted, "but not in any way they anticipated. The advances in neural interface technology alone have revolutionized everything from medical equipment to space exploration. Combat applications seem almost secondary now." A holographic display activated on Sarah's desk, showing Dr. Laxey's excited bioluminescent patterns. "Director Chen, the test results from the civilian adaptation program are in. The scaled-down neural interfaces are showing a 99.7% compatibility rate across all tested species." This had been Sarah's pet project since the Olympics, adapting the platform's neural link technology for everyday use. The implications were staggering. Medical prosthetics that worked perfectly across species barriers, educational systems that could adapt to any learning style, communication devices that translated not just words but concepts and emotions. The Confederation Assembly wants to discuss expanding the program, Admiral Zerix announced, entering the office with his scales showing pleased patterns. Apparently, seeing a Titan platform helping to rebuild cities destroyed in the last border conflict has changed some perspectives about military technology. That had been another unexpected development. The modified platforms, with their enhanced adaptability and species-specific controls, had proven invaluable in peaceful applications. The Mist Collective's phase-shifting technology was revolutionizing search and rescue operations. The crystalline network's harmonic systems were being adapted for environmental restoration projects. "Did you see the latest application from the Cultural Exchange Committee?" Sarah asked, pulling up another holographic display. "They want to establish a permanent performance division, something about advancing diplomatic relations through artistic expression." Commander Vex's crystals chimed with what had become recognizable as laughter. "You humans have a unique gift for turning military hardware into art forms. Though I'm still not sure how I feel about last week's zero-gravity ballet performance." The Void Dancers loved it, Sarah pointed out. They've already commissioned 3 platforms for their next stellar performance. Through the window, they watched as a new group of pilots began their training. The sight would have been unthinkable a year ago. A Titan instructor teaching a Mist collective pilot, while a human engineer explained quantum harmonics to a crystalline student. "You've changed everything," Admiral Zerix observed quietly. "Not just the technology, but how we think about it, how we think about each other." Sarah shook her head. "We just showed everyone what was possible when we stopped limiting ourselves to traditional thinking. The real change happened when every species realized they had something unique to contribute." A commotion from the testing area drew their attention. A young ethereal pilot had just managed to synchronize their platform's energy field with a Titan's gravitational manipulation, creating an effect that defied several laws of physics while looking surprisingly beautiful. Director Chen, her comm system activated with an urgent tone. "The Medical Council needs your input on the new neural prosthetics program, and the Education Board wants to discuss adapting the interface for multi-species learning environments. Also, the Cultural Committee has another performance proposal." Sarah laughed, already heading for the door. "Coming. Commander Vex want to help explain to the Medical Council why letting the quantum cores evolve naturally is actually safer than trying to control every variable." The crystalline engineer's form sparkled with anticipation. "Of course. Though perhaps we should leave out the part about how we discovered that. I'm not sure they're ready to hear about the experimental dance-off between the Titan and Mist collective platforms." As they walked through the facility, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. The neural-linked combat platforms had been designed as weapons of war, but humans had seen something more. A bridge between species, a way to share not just technology but understanding. "Oh," Admiral Zerix called after them. "One more thing. The Youth Education Program asked me to remind you about tomorrow's demonstration. Apparently, several hundred young representatives from various species are very excited to see the, quote, cool giant robots." Sarah grinned. "Tell them to wait until they see what we got planned. The future's going to need pilots, after all." Above them, through the transparent ceiling, New Genesis's binary stars painted the sky in familiar purples and golds. On the testing grounds below, machines that had once been designed for war now danced, built, healed, and taught. But more importantly, they'd brought together beings who might never have understood each other otherwise. "You know what the best part is?" Sarah asked as they reached the conference room. "What's that?" Commander Vex chimed. "We're just getting started." The door opened to reveal representatives from a dozen species, all eager to discuss the next evolution of their shared technology. As Sarah prepared to explain yet another impossible idea, she couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best way to predict the future was to create it, even if that meant turning weapons into wonders along the way.